Some of the most damaging things a man can say sound perfectly harmless. I'm fine. That's just how I am. I'll do it later. They don't scream weakness, but they quietly surrender power, purpose, and potential. The Stoics taught that speech isn't just sound, it's a mirror of the soul. And what we choose to say or not say reveals who we truly are. In this video, we'll explore 8 things intelligent men never say, not because they're flawless, but because they've learned that careless words can quietly kill confidence, credibility, and character. If you value self-mastery, emotional strength, and the wisdom of restraint, you're in the right place. Let's begin. Sign number 1, I'm fine, is a lie you can't afford. Sometimes, the most dangerous phrase a man can utter isn't shouted in anger or whispered in shame. It's spoken with a smile. 2 simple words. I'm fine. You've probably said it maybe just yesterday, maybe every day. But here's the truth. I'm fine is often not a declaration of strength. It's a disguise, a mask that hides exhaustion, disappointment, and the quiet ache of feeling invisible in your own life. I once knew a man named Carter. To everyone else, he had it all together, a steady job, a family, a laugh that filled the room. But beneath that surface was a life on autopilot. Every day he showed up. Every day he said, I'm fine. Until one night, after a long day at work and another dismissive conversation with his spouse, he sat in his car for nearly an hour, engine off, headlights out, not moving, not speaking. Just empty. Later, over coffee, he told me something that stuck with me forever. I didn't break down because I was weak. I broke down because I convinced everyone, including myself, that I didn't deserve better. That being fine was the best I could ask for. That's when I realized I'm fine is often a quiet resignation, a way of saying, I don't want to cause trouble. I don't believe change is possible. I don't think I deserve more than this. But the Stoics would challenge that lie. Marcus Aurelius wrote, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. In other words, stop pretending everything is okay and start pursuing what truly is. When you bury your feelings behind false comfort, you do more than avoid conflict. You abandon your standards. You teach others how to treat you by tolerating the bare minimum. Here's the hard truth. If your relationships, your job, your environment, if any of them constantly drain you, dull your spirit, or reduce you to survival mode, then I'm fine is a slow erosion of self-worth. And one day, you wake up a stranger to your own life. So how do you break the cycle? Start by being honest, not loud, not dramatic, just honest. Say, I'm not okay with this. Say, I deserve more than silence, more than guilt, more than being treated as a placeholder in someone else's story. And say it not with anger, but with certainty. The moment you stop settling, you stop shrinking. You stop whispering, I'm fine, when your soul is screaming for change. Because the man who dares to speak his truth gently, firmly, and without apology isn't weak. He's awake. And when you choose to honor what you feel, you start to rebuild the life you were meant to live. Not just one that looks good on the outside, but one that feels whole on the inside. So the next time someone asks, are you okay? Pause. Don't default. Don't dismiss. Answer, as someone who finally believes this. I am not fine. I am worth more than fine. Sign number 2, chaos is not a personality. Some people don't just create chaos, they carry it like a badge of identity. Everywhere they go, something is on fire. A feud with a coworker, a misunderstanding with a friend, a dramatic fallout with family. And at the center of each storm is the same excuse: that's just how I am. But let's pause for a moment and look deeper. I once knew someone, let's call him Adrian. He was smart, quick-witted, and magnetic in social settings. But over time, I noticed a disturbing pattern. Every relationship in his life was laced with drama. Group chats exploded after one of his comments. Small disagreements became shouting matches. And the worst part? He wore it like it was a personality trait. That's just how I roll, he'd say. I don't sugarcoat things. But there's a difference between being honest and being destructive. The Stoics taught that a wise man doesn't let emotion lead, he lets principle guide. Marcus Aurelius warned, "A fire doesn't burn more brightly by raging wildly, it burns longer when it's controlled." Adrian wasn't fiery because he was passionate. He was volatile because he refused to take ownership of his emotional chaos. He thought intensity meant authenticity, but all it really did was drive people away. Here's the quiet truth. People who constantly live in drama aren't victims of bad luck. They're architects of emotional instability. And they often recruit others into their whirlwind, not to resolve anything, but to keep the cycle going. So how do you recognize when someone's chaos is becoming your diet? You feel emotionally exhausted after every interaction. You find yourself mediating their problems more than your own. You're walking on eggshells, not because of what you did, but because of what might trigger them. That's not connection. That's emotional hostage-taking. The Stoics believed in discipline not as punishment, but as protection. They believed in surrounding yourself with calm minds, not explosive ones. Epictetus said, "You become what you give your attention to." So, if you constantly give attention to someone's chaos, what are you becoming? Here's what intelligent people do. They stop excusing toxic behavior as just how someone is. They don't confuse drama with depth. And most importantly, they refuse to make room for disorder that disguises itself as personality. If someone refuses to take accountability, if they label every fallout as someone else's fault, and if they expect you to always understand them while never trying to understand you, then it's time to step away. Because chaos isn't a personality, and your peace isn't negotiable. Stay tuned, because next, we're going to explore a far more subtle danger: the friend who always shows up for your failures, but never for your success. Sign number 3, the disappearing cheerleader. Some people are always there when you're falling apart, but vanish the moment you start to rise. They listen to your breakdowns. They offer comfort in your darkest moments. And at first, it feels like support. But then comes the test. What happens when something good finally happens to you? You get promoted. You launch a project. You simply feel happy. And suddenly, they go quiet. I remember someone like this. Her name was Isabel. During one of the hardest years of my life, she was there. She checked in often, sent kind messages, gave advice. I thought I had found a lifelong friend. But later, when things began to turn around, when I started regaining confidence, when I achieved something I'd been working toward for years, Isabel changed. I told her I'd been offered a new opportunity. She smiled faintly and said, "Wow, must be nice to have things fall into your lap." It stung, because it hadn't fallen into my lap. I'd fought for it, silently, tirelessly. That's when I realized something. Isabel wasn't attached to me, she was attached to my weakness. She didn't thrive on my growth. She thrived on my wounds. The Stoics warned us of this subtle cruelty. Seneca wrote, "You can tell the character of a person by how they celebrate the fortune of another." It's easy to stand beside someone when they're in pain because your presence makes you look kind. But standing beside someone in their success? That requires true confidence. You see, some people only feel strong when you feel small. Your joy threatens their illusion of control. Your glow makes their shadows more visible. And over time, you learn they don't support you. They support a version of you that feels easier to manage, the struggling one, the uncertain one, the one they can advise and soothe and save. So how do you spot the disappearing cheerleader? They're attentive when you're vulnerable, but dismissive when you're empowered. They rarely celebrate your wins with enthusiasm, or they undercut them with backhanded comments. They feel closer to you in your pain than in your progress. This isn't friendship. It's emotional dependency wrapped in concern. True support is balanced. It claps when you rise and holds you when you fall, without turning either into a competition. So, what should you do? Observe who stays quiet when you shine. Notice who only calls when you're struggling. And don't be afraid to create space between you and those who can't meet your growth with grace. Your light should never have to shrink to keep someone else comfortable. Because intelligent people don't just surround themselves with those who can help them survive, they choose those who can help them thrive. And that's the real danger of emotional imbalance. It conditions you to believe your needs are too much, your voice too loud, your pain too inconvenient. But relationships built on true empathy don't ask you to disappear to keep them alive. So step back if you must, not out of anger, but clarity. Because up next, we'll confront a belief even more quietly destructive. The idea that this is just how life is, and why that mindset might be the very thing holding you back. Sign number 4. This is just how life is the lie that keeps you stuck. There's a quiet kind of surrender that hides behind 6 words. That's just the way things are. It doesn't sound like an excuse. It sounds like realism, like acceptance. But in reality, it's one of the most subtle forms of resignation, the belief that change is for other people, or other lives, or some future version of yourself that may never arrive. Let me tell you about a man named Victor. I met him during a leadership seminar, quiet, well-dressed, in his mid-40s, sharp mind. But every time we talked about growth or changing habits, he'd smile and say, "Look, I'd love to, but that's just the way things are in my world." At first, I assumed he was referring to outside circumstances. But as the sessions went on, I realized he wasn't talking about his world. He was talking about himself. He said things like, "My team never listens. That's just how it is. My marriage is distant, but that's life, right?" Or even, "I used to dream big, but dreams fade. That's just what happens." No anger, no drama, just quiet resignation. But underneath it all was a man who had convinced himself that the discomfort of change wasn't worth the discomfort of trying. The Stoics warned us about this exact trap. Epictetus wrote, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." Meaning, don't say you value growth, clarity, or courage, and then excuse inaction with fatalism. Because here's the truth. That's just the way things are is not a neutral observation. It's a cage, one that locks the present and steals the future. So how do you break that belief? Start by questioning it. Every time you hear yourself say it, pause. Ask, is this truth or is this comfort? Then trace it. Where did you learn this belief? Who taught you to accept stagnation as normal? Finally, disrupt it not with massive action, but with small, consistent rebellion. One new boundary, one honest conversation, one changed habit. Victor eventually did the same. He stopped telling himself, "That's just the way things are," and started asking, what if it doesn't have to be? And that question changed everything. Because intelligent men don't just accept the world as it is. They choose to shape the world within one choice, one boundary, one brave step at a time. So let's now explore a belief that sounds similar, but instead of hiding behind personality, it hides behind time. It doesn't say, I can't change. It whispers something quieter. That dream was for someone younger. And that's when we start letting age make decisions that wisdom never would. Sign number 5, don't let age decide for you. Sometimes the most dangerous beliefs are the ones we whisper to ourselves gently, quietly, as if trying not to be caught hoping. And one of the most corrosive is this: I'm too old for that. It doesn't always sound bitter. Sometimes it's wrapped in a laugh. I'm too old to start over. I'm too old to chase that dream. I'm too old to change now. But underneath the smile is something tragic, a slow surrender. Not to time, but to fear. I once knew a man named Walter. In his early 60s, he'd spent his entire life working as a mechanic. Hands calloused, eyes tired, wisdom etched into every wrinkle. But he had a secret. He loved storytelling. He used to write poems, sketch little characters, dream of writing a children's book. One day, over coffee, I asked him why he never pursued it. He looked down and muttered, "That was for a younger version of me." That line sat with me for weeks, as if dreams had expiration dates. The Stoics never believed that. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men in history, journaled until his final days, reflecting, questioning, refining himself. He wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live." And that's what the phrase, "I'm too old for that," truly means. Not that time has run out, but that you've stopped giving yourself permission to begin again. Walter eventually changed his mind. He started writing slowly. By his 65th birthday, he published his first illustrated story for children inspired by his grandson. It didn't make him famous, but it made him alive in a way I'd never seen before. Here's what intelligent men understand. Age isn't a limitation. It's a lens, one that sharpens your clarity, not blurs it. If anything, your years give you more to say, more insight, more depth, more truth. So ask yourself, is it really age holding you back? Or is it the fear of starting as a beginner again? Are you labeling yourself too old when really you're just scared to look foolish? Courage isn't reserved for the young. In fact, it often takes more bravery to begin later in life, because now your pride is louder and your regrets are heavier. But that's also where wisdom lives, not in refusing the journey, but in choosing it anyway, even when the path is unfamiliar. Because nothing is sadder than a man who still has breath, but no longer believes he can build something meaningful with it. And from the lie of age, we shift now to another quiet destroyer of potential, a phrase that seems harmless, but slowly erodes your time, your focus, and your legacy. Sign number 6, the illusion of later. There's a phrase that sounds harmless, even responsible. I'll do it later. But behind those 4 words hides one of the most deceptive illusions we tell ourselves: that time is patient, that our window of opportunity will stay open until we're ready. I once knew a man named Caleb, sharp, driven, full of vision. He had plans for everything: to start his own business, to reconnect with his brother, to take his wife on the trip they had postponed for years. But he always had a reason to delay. Now's not the right time. Once I finish this quarter's work, maybe next month when things calm down. But life didn't wait. One day, Caleb's brother passed away unexpectedly. Later became never. He told me over coffee, eyes full of quiet grief. I kept thinking I had more time. And now, the moment I needed the one I kept postponing is gone. That conversation never left me. The Stoics warned us about this very thing. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. It wasn't a morbid thought, it was a tool. A sharpened sense of urgency that filtered out what truly mattered from what could wait. Because intelligent men don't measure their days by intentions, they measure them by actions. And here's the truth most people won't say aloud. Later is a luxury, and not everyone gets to spend it. The man who says, I'll start when I'm ready, often forgets that readiness is rarely a feeling, it's a decision. He waits for the perfect moment. But perfection is a mirage that moves further away the longer you chase it. So what can you do instead? Start small. That uncomfortable phone call? Make it. That new skill you've been avoiding? Watch one video. That apology? Send it now. Make time your ally, not your excuse. Because while others are waiting for the stars to align, intelligent men are already laying bricks under the clouds. Caleb eventually honored his late brother not with a grand gesture, but by changing how he lived. He stopped postponing presence. He started acting on what mattered. And day by day, the weight of regret was replaced with the quiet dignity of action. We now turn to the final illusion on our list. A sentence that sounds like strength, but often hides fear of growth. Let's take a deeper look at it. Sign number 7, that's just how I am, is not who you have to be. There's a sentence many men say, with quiet resignation. And it sounds deceptively innocent. That's just how I am. But beneath those 6 words lies one of the greatest threats to growth. Because what it really means is, I've stopped trying. It's not a confession of truth. It's a surrender of responsibility. I once knew a man named Trevor. A good man, loyal, hardworking, but stubborn. He struggled with anger, snapped easily, shut down during difficult conversations. And whenever someone gently brought it up, a colleague, a friend, even his partner, he would smile and say, that's just how I am. I've always been like this. At first, people gave him grace, but eventually, they gave him distance. Because over time, Trevor stopped being someone others could grow with. He became someone they had to manage around. And that's what this phrase does. It puts your past on a pedestal and locks your future in a box. It says, this is me, take it or leave it. But here's the Stoic truth. The person you are today is not fixed. It's simply the result of what you've repeatedly chosen. Epictetus once said, it is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. The same applies to identity. It's not your temperament that traps you, it's your story about your temperament. The narrative you tell yourself to avoid change, to avoid discomfort, to avoid growth. Real strength doesn't come from staying the same. It comes from self-mastery, from choosing to challenge what no longer serves you. And yes, change is uncomfortable. Yes, it will stretch your ego and demand effort. But the moment you say, that's just how I am, you're giving up the pen the power to write a new chapter. Here's how you know it's time to evolve. You keep repeating the same emotional reactions and calling it personality. You reject feedback not because it's false, but because it's inconvenient. You feel stuck but secretly relieved that the stuckness gives you an excuse not to try. So what can you do? 1. Pause when you hear yourself say it. Ask, is this really who I am, or just who I've become by default? 2. Name one behavior that no longer aligns with the man you aspire to be. Then begin replacing it not overnight, but intentionally. 3. Surround yourself with people who don't just accept you, but inspire you to become more of who you could be. Because the truth is, you are not carved in stone. You are clay shaped by what you practice, what you pursue, and what you permit. So, when you catch yourself saying, "That's just how I am," stop and say instead, "That may be who I've been, but it's not who I have to remain." Because intelligent men don't find safety in fixed identities. They find strength in self-reinvention. Let's now uncover one final phrase, a subtle one that often hides beneath good intentions, but quietly weakens every man who says it. Sign number 8, "I'll be happy when," is a trap disguised as hope. There's a quiet lie that intelligent men learn to stop telling themselves. It doesn't shout. It whispers, "I'll be happy when the promotion comes, when the debt is paid, when she comes back, when life finally slows down." It sounds like ambition. It feels like hope. But it's actually a form of self-abandonment, a way of postponing joy to a future that may never arrive. I once knew a man named Elijah. On paper, his life looked perfect. High income, respected career, a beautiful family. But every conversation with him ended the same way. "I just need to get through this quarter, then I'll breathe. Once the kids are older, I'll have time for myself. As soon as we move, everything will be better." But that next phase never came. Because as soon as he reached one milestone, he moved the goalpost again. He didn't realize he was outsourcing his peace to conditions he couldn't fully control. The Stoics had a word for this: deferred contentment. And they warned, if your happiness depends on future outcomes, you've surrendered your peace to time, circumstance, and chance. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Do not squander what is left of your life in expectation of the future. Concentrate every minute on what is in front of you." Because the truth is, every time you say, "I'll be happy when," you're declaring that this moment, this breath, this life right now is not enough. And eventually, that belief becomes permanent. You start living on delay. You become a stranger to the present. Here's how to know if you've fallen into this trap. You're always chasing the next thing, but never truly arriving. You find moments of peace uncomfortable, as if rest is something to be earned. You've achieved things you once prayed for and still feel empty inside. So what can you do? 1. Practice present tense gratitude. Instead of listing what you want, name what already is. Not to settle, but to awaken. 2. Reframe success. Instead of "I'll be happy when," try "I choose joy even as I build." Because real joy isn't found at the finish line. It's found in the pace, the presence, the purpose. 3. Recognize that striving and stillness are not opposites. You can want more and still honor where you are. Elijah eventually realized this, not because of a tragedy, but because of a small moment. Watching his daughter dance in the living room, while he checked emails from work, she looked at him, beaming, and he almost missed it. That night, he closed his laptop, sat with her, and for the first time in years, felt present. No waiting, no when, just now. Because joy isn't a destination, it's a decision. So here's what intelligent men understand. Peace isn't postponed. It's protected in this moment, through presence, perspective, and practice. And now that we've uncovered these 8 silent habits that quietly sabotage your growth, let's pull them together with one final reflection. Because knowing them is the first step. Changing them, that's where your real strength begins. Final reflections and your 7-day challenge. Every phrase we explored today might seem small, but that's the danger. They don't arrive with warning signs. They slip into our language and quietly shape our identity. The Stoics believe that words reflect the architecture of our soul. So if we want to build a life of strength, we must first refine our speech. Speak with clarity, speak with integrity, and above all, speak with intention. So here's your challenge. For the next 7 days, pay attention to your most common phrases. Do they empower you or excuse you? Do they reflect who you are or who you're afraid to become? Write one line each day about something you chose not to say and how it made you feel. You might be surprised how much power lives in your silence. If this video spoke to something deep inside you, tap like to help others discover it too. Subscribe if you're walking this path of wisdom, and leave a comment below. I choose words that strengthen me, because in a world full of noise, an intelligent man is not the one who talks the most, but the one who speaks with purpose and lives with clarity. Until next time, stay disciplined, stay thoughtful, and as always, stay true to yourself.